If you walked into an American home in 1900 and told the family that one day they would pay to keep every cubic foot of air in the house at 70 degrees all night in every room, whether anyone was in it or not, they would have thought you were describing a fantasy or a madman, because for almost the entire history of human civilization, nobody heated a house. They heated the people inside it. And here's the part that should bother you. Across 5 separate civilizations on 3 continents, with no contact between them, engineers arrived at the same answer independently. The Koreans built it into the floor. The Chinese built it into the bed. The Japanese built it into the table. The Russians built it into a bench. The Spanish built it under a blanket. 5 cultures, 1 conclusion, and then, in the span of about 40 years, all of them abandoned it. Today, the United States spends roughly a third of its residential energy on space heating, and modern research on thermal comfort says something uncomfortable about that. It says that a person in a 60-degree room with warm surfaces can report the same comfort as a person in a 70-degree room with cold ones. Same comfort, 10 degrees of difference, and your thermostat cannot see it. So, why did every one of these systems disappear at almost exactly the same moment in history? And is there anything you can actually do about it in a normal American house this winter? Let's find out. Start with the physics, because the physics is where the confusion begins. Your body loses heat in 4 ways. Conduction, which is direct contact. Convection, which is moving air. Evaporation, which is sweat and breath. And radiation, which is your body throwing infrared energy at every surface around you. For a clothed person sitting still in a normal room, radiation is the largest single channel, depending on the study and the conditions. Somewhere in the region of half your total heat loss leaves your body as radiation and travels in a straight line to whatever surfaces are nearby. If those surfaces are warm, they radiate back. If they are cold, they take and give almost nothing. This is why a stone church can feel freezing at 65 degrees, and a small room with a lit stove can feel comfortable at 60. The air temperature is not the variable doing the work. Engineers gave the variable a name, mean radiant temperature. It is the average temperature of every surface a person can see, weighted by how much of their field of view each surface occupies. And when you combine it with air temperature, you get what building scientists call operative temperature, which is a far better predictor of whether someone will actually feel warm. The ASHRA thermal comfort standard has recognized this for decades. It is not fringe. It is not new. It is the accepted model. And yet, your thermostat measures one thing, the temperature of the air at one point on one wall, usually in a hallway. Now hold that thought, because the ancient engineers did not have equation. They had something better. They had winters that killed people and enough generations to iterate. The most sophisticated version came out of Korea, and it is called the ondal. The principle is that the floor is the heating system. A firebox sits at one end of the house, usually attached to the kitchen, and the smoke and hot gas from cooking is pulled horizontally under the entire floor through a network of flues cut into the ground, before exiting through a chimney at the far end. The floor is built from flat stone slabs, sealed with clay, and finished with oiled paper. That stone mass absorbs heat all day and releases it slowly for hours after the fire is out. And because the heat comes from below, the surface a person sits on, sleeps on, and touches constantly is the warmest surface in the building. Korean domestic architecture was shaped around it. Low furniture, sitting on the floor, sleeping on the floor. The culture and the engineering are inseparable, and archaeological evidence for the technique in Korea goes back thousands of years. In northern China, the same problem produced the Kong. Instead of the whole floor, a raised masonry platform several feet across sits in the main room with flues running through it, again typically fed by the cooking stove. The family eats on it, works on it, and sleeps on it. It is a heated island in a cold room, and the room is allowed to stay cold. Japan went smaller still. The kotatsu is a low table with a heat source underneath and a heavy quilt draped over the frame, with the tabletop laid on top of the quilt to hold it down. You put your legs under it. The air a foot above your head is genuinely cold. Nobody cares, because the heat is where the person is. Russia went the other direction and went enormous. The The traditional Russian stove is a masonry structure that can occupy a substantial fraction of the house. It is fired hard for a short period, absorbs an enormous quantity of heat into its mass, and then radiates it out for the better part of the day. Crucially, it typically includes a sleeping shelf built into the warm masonry itself, so the most valuable surface in a house is the one you lie on. And in Spain, the simplest version of all, the mesa camilla, a round table with a shelf underneath holding a brazier and a heavy circular cloth over the top reaching to the floor. The family sits around it with the cloth over their laps. That is the entire technology. 5 solutions, 5 materials, 5 levels of sophistication, from a national infrastructure of stone flues down to a table with a blanket on it. And every single one of them makes the same bet, that the correct thing to heat is the surface in contact with a human being, and that the air in the room is not worth spending fuel on. Now, the obvious question, if this worked for 3,000 years, what killed it? The answer is not that somebody proved it wrong. Nobody ever proved it wrong. The answer is that the economics changed underneath it. Every system I have described has one thing in common. They are slow, they are heavy, and they are fixed in place. A masonry stove takes hours to charge and hours to release. An ondal floor is part of the building's structure. A column cannot be moved. These systems trade responsiveness for efficiency, because when fuel is scarce and expensive, efficiency is the only thing that matters. In the middle of the 20th century, fuel stopped being scarce. Cheap oil and expanding natural gas networks reached ordinary homes in the industrialized world, and suddenly the calculation inverted. You no longer needed a system that squeezed every last calorie out of a small fire. You could simply burn more. And central heating offered something the old systems could not. Instant, uniform, thermostat-controlled warmth in every room at once. With no ash, no tending, and no fire in the middle of the living room. There was also a financial machine pushing in the same direction. In the post-war housing boom, mortgage lending and property appraisal standards in the United States increasingly treated central heating as a baseline requirement for a home to be considered standard construction. A house without it was harder to finance and harder to value. Whatever a builder personally thought about thermal mass became irrelevant, because the money had already made the decision. And finally, the codes, as building regulation matured. It needed something measurable. Air temperature is easy to measure. You put a sensor in a room and read a number. Mean radiant temperature requires a globe thermometer, a survey of every surface, and an understanding of where the occupant is actually sitting. So the code standardized on a thing that was easy to measure. And once that happened, every heating system in the country was optimized for the metric, not the goal. We got very, very good at producing warm air in empty rooms. So the real question is what any of this is worth to you in a house with drywall, a furnace, and a thermostat. And I want to be honest here, because the honest answer is less dramatic than the title of this video suggests. You are not going to install an ondal. Retrofitting a masonry floor heating system into an existing American house is, for almost everyone watching, somewhere between wildly impractical and structurally impossible. And I would be lying if I told you otherwise. But the principle is portable even when the hardware is not. The most direct modern descendant is hydronic radiant floor heating, and it is a genuinely excellent system. It puts warm water in tubing under the floor, delivers heat as radiation from the largest surface in the room, and lets you run a lower air temperature for the same comfort. It also pairs unusually well with a heat pump, because it works at low water temperatures. The catch is that it is a renovation, not a weekend job, and it makes the most sense during new construction or a full floor replacement. The cheaper and far more accessible version is to stop losing radiant heat through your windows. Glass is almost always the coldest surface in a heated room, and if you're sitting near it, your body is radiating heat straight into it all evening. Heavy curtains, thermal blinds, or interior insulating panels raise that surface temperature and change how the room feels without touching your thermostat at all. This is the single highest value thing most people watching can do this month. Then there is the direct approach. Heated seat pads, foot warmers, electric throws. These consume a tiny fraction of what a furnace does because they heat a few square feet instead of a few thousand cubic feet. It is the Mesa Camilla with a plug on it, and it is not a compromise. It is the original idea, but I want to give you the counterargument as well, because it is real. Modern building science has largely solved this problem from the other end. A well-insulated, well-sealed house with good windows has warm interior surfaces by default because the walls are close to the air temperature. In a genuinely well-built modern home, mean radiant temperature and air temperature converge, and the whole distinction I have spent this video on quietly stops mattering. So the ancient approach is not universally superior. It is a correct answer to a specific problem, which is a leaky, poorly insulated building where you cannot afford to warm everything. That describes a very large share of the existing housing stock in America and Europe. It does not describe a new build to current code. And if you have the money and the opportunity, insulating the envelope will beat every technique in this video. That is not the romantic answer, but it is the true one. What the old systems really left us is not a device. It is a question. Before you turn the thermostat up another 2 degrees, it is worth asking what is actually cold, the air or the surfaces around you. Because for 3,000 years, everyone who had survived winter without cheap fuel knew the answer, and we have spent about 70 years forgetting it. If you found this useful and you want more on how buildings actually work, subscribing genuinely helps this channel reach people who would never think to search for it. And if you want to see how a system that is sitting in millions of American homes right now might be quietly working against you all winter, the next video is right here.